What's up, everybody? Travis here again with another chapter of bass fishing for beginners. Today we're going to be talking about fishing line, and we're going to solve the mystery of what this bright orange rattlesnake tail looking thing is. So stick around.
We're in pursuit.
As far as bass fishing goes, there's four kind of primary types of line. We're going to talk about all four of them, and we'll break them down, what the differences are, and when it's best to use them. They are the following categories. First, you got your basic monofilament line. Then we have fluorocarbon. Nifty looking stuff, right? This is considered a copolymer. Most copolymers, they're a combination of fluorocarbon and monofilament. Most of them have a monofilament core with a fluorocarbon coating. It's sort of a step between. It's got the best and potentially the worst properties of both types. And lastly, my personal favorite, Braid, also called multi-strand. Let's talk about what categories they fit into and what really makes the difference. We will start with the monofilament. Now, some of the properties of monofilament are there's a lot of stretch to it, but there's also a ton of line memory. And what line memory is this. You can see it wants to hold that spiral shape because of the way it was wound and where it's been sitting on the spool you bought it on. Monofilament has the worst line memory, worst meaning most, than any of the other types of fishing line. I'm not a huge fan of monofilament. When I use it, it's usually as a leader, and it's usually on topwater bait, because monofilament floats, fluorocarbon does not. So if you're using topwater baits, poppers, frogs, things of that nature, you also want your line to float because you're looking for maximum buoyancy. If your line is sinking, it's going to dig the nose down a little bit. If you want your bait to stay on top, use monofilament. Fluorocarbon also has some line memory, but it does not have as much, as you can see as it comes off the spool. It does not have as much line memory as monofilament does. Fluorocarbon sinks, so you would want to use it with bait that you're running subsurface, whether it's spinnerbait, crankbait, the list goes on and on. Subsurface lures in clear water, you want the fluorocarbon. The best parts about monofilament and fluorocarbon is that they're nearly invisible to the fish, which is important when you're fishing clear water. The clearer the water is, the more likely you will run up against line-shy fish. And what I mean by line-shy is they see the line attached to the lure and it turns them off to the whole thing. Now let's talk about braid. I spool up braid on pretty much everything I use. Now, if I'm going to be fishing clear waters, I will tie on a leader. Usually a fluorocarbon leader, depending on what I'm using. We're getting into spring. We're getting into the months where topwater bite is going to start coming back, which is great. Topwater bites, in my opinion, are the most fun when you can actually see your lure on the surface of the water and watch that fish come up and gulp it. Fun. Love it. So when I'm throwing topwater, I'm still going to be using braid. Braid, by the way, does also float. So I'm going to be using Braid, and I'm going to put it on a monofilament leader, and I'm going to keep that thing on the surface. If I'm fishing subsurface lures and the water is clear, I'm going to be using fluorocarbon. Same thing. I'm going to tie the leader onto the main line. I'm going to have Braid on the main. Throw my lure out. You want to give it enough, and I would say anywhere from 3 to 5 feet of leader if you're fishing in clear water. I give it much more than that. I will put 18 to 20 feet of fluorocarbon leader on my Braid, as I'm tying, retying, putting different things on there, you're going to lose, up to a foot of line every time you change lures. So that 18 to 20 feet lasts a really long time. Problem with that is that your knot is going to have to go through the guides. So we will be talking about some knots too, but that's the basic breakdown. Here's the quick review rundown. Monofilament, it floats, it has a lot of stretch to it, and it has a lot of line memory. Now sometimes that stretch is very important depending on the conditions you're fishing, when you don't want to rip hooks when you try to set them. Especially with certain types of baits, monofilament is the way to go. Fluorocarbon sinks, it has way less stretch, and it has less line memory also. Braid has almost zero line memory as long as you spooled it up right. It does not stretch at all. It's very strong, and it also floats. All right, so let's get into knots. I know I put a little teaser up there about what this rattlesnake tail looking thing is. This is the macro version of the FG knot, and we will get to the FG knot. I did it with this because it's just way too hard to get on camera using actual fish line, but this sort of explains where the FG knot gets its strength from and why it's a great knot. I have sort of limited myself to just a few knots. When I am tying on lures, depending on the line I'm using and depending on the lure type, I will 9 times out of 10, if I'm throwing it on fluorocarbon, I'm just going to tie it on with a uni knot. Now you can argue with me, you can bash with me, you can tell me that's the worst knot to use. I'm telling you what I use. Limiting yourself to a few knots makes it much easier to remember them. So basically when I'm tying on fluorocarbon, I'm tying a uni knot, except when I'm doing drop shot. When I'm doing drop shot, I will tie on a Palomar knot, because that's the way to go, with a long tag end to attach your drop shot weight to. I fish almost everything on fluorocarbon on a braided leader. When you're tying leaders on, I do it one of two ways. One is the double uni knot, which is sort of a weird thing to call, uni being one, so you have a double one knot. The other knot that I tie is this bad boy, the FG knot. If I'm tying direct to braid, which does happen, I'm here in Texas, the water is often stained. It's clear water is sort of a rarity in north central Texas. Got a lot of silt, got a lot of clay, so it keeps the water a little bit chocolatey, which is completely fine to throw straight braid on. The fish aren't going to see the line. They're going after silhouettes and they're going after vibration. So it's rare to get a line shy fish in Texas in muddy water. Clarity is a moving target in Texas. Sometimes you can fish a lake one week after a rain and it looks like chocolate milk. The next week you could have 2, 3, 4, 5 feet of visibility. The more visibility that you have, the more you're going to want to switch to a monofilament or a fluorocarbon. I will tie straight braid to jigs. I'll tie straight braid to a lot of things. What I won't tie straight braid to, and there's 2 schools of thought in this, I won't tie straight braid to anything with the treble hook. Even if I'm only tying on a couple feet of leader, if it's got a treble hook, I don't do it on straight braid. Treble hooks just have a way of finding braid and putting themselves into it, so there's no way to get your hook out of the line without starting to fray some of the strands, which gives you a weak point. None of us wants a weak point, right? So that's my advice for you when it comes to braid. The only things I tie it straight to are going to be jigs, single hook rigs. Treble hooks, my recommendation, stay away from braids. Even if you're tying on a short leader, tie on a leader that every time you cast, retrieve, put your lure, hook it, that you're not going to be hooking into your own braid. So let's get into tying some knots now. As I said, this is the FG knot. I do use this knot often. The difference between the FG knot and the uni knot for me is if I'm pre-rigging at home, then I will take the time, because it's tying the FG knot is kind of involved. I'm going to show you. I will tie the FG knot if I'm prepping the day before I go fishing. If I'm actually out on the boat or on shore and have to retie a leader, just for convenience, ease, and speed, I do the double uni knot. So we're going to take a look at both of those. And again, these are knots that you're using to tie a leader onto braid. Okay, so for our FG knot, keep our main line nice and tight. You're going to take your fluorocarbon and go over your line at a 90-degree angle. Give yourself a foot to 18 inches worth of slack here on your fluorocarbon. Pinch them together right here. So basically you have a cross. Now you're going to take your fluorocarbon leader. You're going to go over the top, and then you're going to come around the bottom towards your body from your hand. Then you're going to come back around away from your body in the same direction, over the top, under the bottom, and then keep alternating back and forth for a total of 20 loops. Always start towards you instead of towards your pole. It'll make a difference when we get to the end of the knot here to finish it. So here we go. Over the top, going to come around the bottom towards us. That's one. Going to have to keep this joint here pinched in tight and come under the bottom, past your hands. And that's 2. 3. 19 and 20. So if you can see there, it's almost like a weave is what you've done. Now once you've got your 20th one, pull it all tight. Come back around your main line between your hand and your pole with a simple overhand knot. Some of these would be a lot easier if you had 3 hands. Okay, once you've got your overhand knot clinched down, you can release the tension and you don't have to pinch it anymore. Now we're going to take the tag end of the fluorocarbon and we're going to cut it off nice and tight to the knot. Okay, now to protect that end of the knot, we're going to take the braid and we're also going to do a simple overhand knot. Pull it down nice and tight to the top of the FG knot. So now you have the knot in the braid is protecting that tip of the fluorocarbon at the top of the knot. As you can see, it's very thin, it's in line, it's going, as you cast, it's going to move through the guides really good. Now we're going to do that same thing again, where you can actually see what's going on. Okay, the green line is going to represent our braid, which is our main line. And the orange is going to represent our monofilament leader. This will give you a much better look at what actually happens with this knot. Okay, so again, keep tension in your main line. Fluorocarbon at a right angle over the top, and then starting towards you, come around. That's 1, 2, 3, 11, 12. We're going to stop at 12 here. I don't think we need to see this whole process over again. So call it 20. We're up at the top here. We're going to take our tag in, come around the main line, simple overhand knot, clinch it down on the main line. There you go there. Okay. Then we're going to take that tag end, cut it off. It's going to look a little messy because it's paracord, not fishing line. So there you go. To protect that knot, we're going to come around the main line, do an overhand knot, with the tag end of our braid, so that this line in the braid is protecting this line in the fluorocarbon, or this knot in the braid is protecting that knot in the fluorocarbon. Cut your tag end off. Now, as we're seeing this as sort of a magnified view, you can tell that the top end of the knot is kind of clunky, far less clunky on actual fishing line, but the bottom end of the knot is actually way more streamlined. Like I said, this looks like a big mess with braid, or with paracord. With braid and fluorocarbon, it works really well. Now for the double uni knot. This one you don't need to worry about having the tension, and you don't have to use your teeth, so this knot's probably more mom approved. So you have your main line, your braid, and your leader line, which is your fluorocarbon. And you're going to come in from opposite directions like that, right? So now you've got the two lines side by side. Start with your braid. What you're going to do is make your braid into a loop right here. And then you're going to take your tag end and you're going to go through the loop, and also you're going to be going around the fluorocarbon. I usually do this 5 times. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we're going to clinch it down. Nice and easy. Just like that. Okay? We're going to do the same thing with the fluorocarbon. So now you got your fluorocarbon end here and your main line. You run them side by side. You're going to make that loop again. Then you're going to come through the loop and around the fluorocarbon. Same thing, 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, because it's fluorocarbon, and fluorocarbon is really bad when it comes to getting a braided, whenever you tie a knot with fluorocarbon, wet it. Dip it in the water, or do it the old redneck way and just get some spit on it. And you're going to tighten that fluorocarbon knot down onto your braid, like so. Put a little bit more moisture between those two knots. And then take your lines, make sure the tag ends are just hanging loose. and pull those two knots towards each other until they touch. This is also a very strong knot. I've never had a double uni fail, but I never heard of anyone who had an FG knot fail. Clip your tag ends tight to your knot. There you go. That knot is plenty strong. Let's a better look at the double uni knot. So again, the green representing our main line, the orange representing our leader. Side by side like that. Let them overlap a bit. It's okay to cut a couple extra inches off your tag end. It's much harder to tie a knot with almost zero tag end. So here we go. Our main line. We're gonna make our loop. Give myself a little more tag end since this is paracord, not fishing line. Okay, so we're gonna make our loop, and we're gonna go around the leader and through the loop. 1, 2, 3. We're going to do this 3 times instead of 5 just because it's a little bit tougher to get these things worked out with paracord. Okay, so then we're going to do the same thing now with the tag end of our leader line. We're going to make our loop here, and we're going to go through the loop and around our main line. 2, 3. Like I said, I usually do 5. Cinch that down, right? And then we're going to take our 2 lines and pull them against each other until those knots meet. There you go. First knot I'm going to show you is Palomar knot. Like I said, I only use this knot when I'm tying braid directly to the lure or when I'm doing drop shot, which would be with fluorocarbon most of the time. So what you're going to do is you're going to go through the eye of your lure or the eye of your hook or the split ring of your lure, whatever the attachment point happens to be. Leave yourself a lot of tag end, because what you're going to do is you're going to go back through the eye in the opposite direction. Okay, so what you have at this point is you have your main line and your tag end on one side and this loop on the other. You're going to take this loop and go around your tag line and your main line. Simple overhand knot. Don't clinch it all the way down yet. And then you're going to take this loop. What you're going to do is you're going to take the entire lure or hook through there. Make sure you don't catch any hooks or skirts or anything else that might get caught in your knot. Then you're going to pull it down tight by taking both lines, your main line and your tag end, and pulling them as one. Tighten that down. Once that's tightened down, take just the tag end of the line and pull it down. You're locked in now. It's a good knot. And there it is there. As you can see, that knot's not going anywhere. That is your basic Palomar knot. The next one I'm going to show you, I'm going to use this crankbait here for my example. Cut this old line off here. Okay, this is just a regular old uni knot. So you're going to run your line through your eye or your split ring. Should be wearing my reading glasses while I'm doing this. Okay, I think we got it that time. Yeah, success. Okay, so you're going to take your tag end and come back over here to your main line. You're going to make that loop around your fingers. And then just like we did with the double uni knot, you're going to take your tag end, go through that loop whilst going around the main line. 5 times. 2, 3, 4, 5. Before you clinch it all the way down, wet your knot. Tighten her down. And what you have is, it's going to look something like this. Your knot up here. So wet your line between your knot and your eye. Eye of the lure, not your own eye. Keep hooks away from your eyes. Good safety tip there. Then use your fingers, your fingernail, to slide that knot all the way down to the eye. Like so. Cut your tag end off. There it is there. Also, very strong, good knot. I think that about covers it for knots and lines, at least from what I can teach you. There are tons and tons and tons of different knots and tons of videos on YouTube about how to tie them. My philosophy is learn 4 or 5, learn them well so that you know what you're doing. You don't have to look something up to remember how to tie it, and remember those 4 or 5 knots. FG knot is great if you've got the time and the patience and the manual dexterity to do it. Double uni knot, to me, just as good. Like I said, I've never had a double uni knot fail. Never even heard of anyone having an FG knot fail though. So it's a matter of how much time you want to put into tying that knot, really. And like I said, I'll use a Palomar knot to tie directly to braid when I'm tying braid directly to the lure, or when I'm doing drop shot. And other than that, I pretty much just use the uni knot. Wait a minute, I forgot something. As I'm sitting here editing this video, I realized that I forgot to mention one important factor about the different types of fishing line, and that's castability, which is a very important thing. As far as casting goes, monofilament is going to give you the worst results. That's because of pretty much the ingrained line memory. It's gonna pigtail as it comes off the reel, as it goes through the guides. It's more friction and it's less cast. The fluorocarbon is much better at casting than monofilament, and braid casts the best. I'm telling you what, you load up a bait caster with 20-pound braid, you're gonna surprise yourself at how far you're actually casting. So sorry I forgot. I'm just gonna insert it right here into the video and call it good. I hope this was helpful for y'all. If you have any questions, comments, please leave them down below. If you haven't already done so, please hit like and subscribe. Hit the little, bell icon so you get notifications when I drop a new video. And yeah, if you have questions, leave them in the comments. I read all the comments, and if you have a question that I can answer, I will do so. If not, I will look through some of my resources and try to help you dig up an answer. Anyway, keep grinding them out, folks. You will catch one eventually. See ya! Yes! FG knot fishing keychain.